The glass of red wine stopped an inch from my lips when my phone buzzed. One message, "Don't eat anything, they know." My hand froze, my smile still painted on for the family watching me. Across the table, my stepmother Diana tilted her head, that perfect hostess grin never faltering, though I saw the flicker of tension in her eyes. My dad raised his glass, oblivious proud, saying something about loyalty, about family. I barely heard him. My pulse drowned everything out. The same bottle, the same year, the same wine my mom drank the night she died. My dad's laugh filled the air, but all I could taste was metal and memory. I looked down at the message again. They know. And now so did I. It had started only an hour earlier when the Christmas dinner began. The laughter was loud enough to hide anything, the clinking of silverware, the scent of roasted beef, the glow of a chandelier that looked too perfect for the family sitting beneath it. My dad sat at the head of the table, his silver cufflinks catching the light every time he lifted his glass. Across from him, my stepmother Diana leaned forward, smiling too hard, her voice a sweet hum of control. My sister Eden tossed her blonde hair and laughed at something that wasn't funny. I sat 2 seats away, pretending to smile, pretending I belonged. When Diana reached for the wine bottle and said my name, her eyes caught mine like a warning. I didn't know then that a message would arrive before the glass ever reached my lips. I moved my napkin onto my lap, watching the way Diana poured, slow and deliberate as if the wine were an art form. She tilted the bottle just so the ruby liquid swirling against the crystal. The sound of it made my stomach turn. She set the bottle down and slid the glass toward me. Her manicured hand brushed mine soft and cool. My dad raised his glass, his grin practiced. "To my family," he said. Everyone echoed him, voices overlapping in false harmony. I lifted my glass but didn't drink. The light above flickered for a second, barely noticeable. My dad chuckled and told a joke about the electric bill, and everyone laughed again. I smiled, but my hand was trembling. The waiter appeared behind me, a young man in a white shirt with sleeves too long for his wrists. He placed another dish on the table, then slipped a folded paper beside my plate. For a second, I thought it was the bill. I frowned and unfolded it under the tablecloth. "Don't eat anything. They know." The words were scribbled in hurried ink, small and sharp. My throat went dry. I folded it again, tucking it under my napkin, my heart pounding so loud I was sure someone could hear. I looked up and saw Diana watching me. Her smile froze for half a heartbeat before she turned back to my dad. I needed air. The room felt smaller than it should. The music from the small band near the fireplace faded behind the sound of my own pulse. I set my fork down and excused myself, saying I needed to take a call. No one questioned it. My dad was too busy bragging about Eden's promotion, and Diana was refilling his glass. I walked toward the hallway, heels clicking softly against marble. In the restroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. The lighting was warm but cruel, exposing every flicker of fear in my face. I took a deep breath, forcing my hands steady. The note felt heavy in my pocket. Who sent it? Harris, maybe? The head chef who'd been with our family longer than Diana had. He'd known my mom. He'd been there the night she died. The memory hit me like cold air. Mom sitting in the same restaurant, in the same private room, her laughter thinner that year. I was 16, then still believing family meant safety. After she passed, the coroner said heart failure. Dad remarried within a year. A soft knock startled me. It was Eden. Her reflection appeared behind mine in the mirror, her expression curious. "You okay, Kat?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just a headache." She shrugged. "Dad's asking for you. He wants a toast. I'll be right there." When she left, I looked down at the note again. "Don't eat anything. They know." The handwriting looked familiar, old-fashioned, like something from the kitchen order slips Harris used. I slipped it back into my clutch, smoothed my dress, and returned to the dining room. The laughter resumed as if nothing had happened. I sat down and noticed my plate had been replaced with a fresh one. The glass of wine sat waiting. Diana's eyes followed me. "Everything all right?" she asked sweetly. "Perfect," I said. She nodded, almost satisfied, and turned to my dad. They spoke quietly, too low for me to hear, but their tone carried. My dad's hand rested over hers. I focused on the red of the wine. It shimmered under the chandelier, rich and deep. My mom used to say wine was supposed to breathe. Maybe that's what it was doing now. Breathing secrets. I pushed the glass aside. Not drinking, Dad's voice carried across the table. I smiled thinly, watching my figure. The table laughed. Diana's smile didn't reach her eyes. Dinner stretched on like a play that refused to end. Between courses, I caught Harris's gaze through the kitchen door. He gave a quick, almost invisible shake of his head. My chest tightened. When dessert arrived, a dense chocolate cake topped with red berries, I excused myself again, this time to the service corridor. Harris was waiting near the pantry, wiping his hands on a towel. His eyes darted toward the dining room, then back to me. "You shouldn't have come back," he whispered. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then handed me a folded napkin. Inside was a smaller piece of paper, a duplicate of the one I'd already read. "Who wrote this?" He looked down. "You need to trust me. Don't eat. Don't drink." My mind spun. "Are you saying—" He cut me off. "Not here. They have eyes everywhere. Come to the kitchen when they start the second toast." "Harris, what's happening?" He didn't answer. He turned and disappeared through the swinging door. Back at the table, my dad was already standing, his voice booming. "One last toast," he said, "for a family who stays loyal." I sat, every nerve on edge. Diana poured again, smiling, that same perfect smile. She filled my glass last. "To loyalty," Dad said. "To survive," I murmured. He didn't notice. The first sip touched my lips before I stopped myself. The taste lingered metallic. I placed the glass down and glanced toward the kitchen door. Harris's face appeared for a split second, his eyes urgent. I pushed back my chair and rose. Diana's voice sliced through the noise. "Where are you going, dear?" I smiled. "To check on dessert." "You know me can't resist chocolate." She tilted her head, that smile never fading, but her hand gripped the stem of her glass too tight. I felt her watching me all the way to the door. The kitchen was empty except for Harris. He grabbed my arm, pulled me behind a counter. "I saw her do it," he whispered. "Do what?" He looked pale. "The wine. Same bottle, same brand, same year. She poured it into your mom's glass that night." I felt my stomach drop. "You can't be sure." He opened a drawer, revealing a small vial half full. "Found it in her purse just now. Arsenic, same smell as last time." I couldn't breathe. "We need to leave," he said. "But you have to act normal." I stared at him, trying to make sense of the spinning world around me. "She killed my mom." He nodded slowly. "Your dad covered it." My body went cold. My mind reached for air, for anything solid. I walked back towards the dining room, the note heavy in my pocket, my hands trembling but my face calm. The light flickered again as I stepped inside. My dad looked up, his smile polished. "Is everything all right?" "Perfect," I said again. Diana studied me, her expression unreadable. For a moment I thought about running. Then I looked at my glass, at the red swirl of poison that had killed my mom, and something inside me hardened. I sat down and lifted it slowly, just enough to make them watch. "To my family," I said. Diana's smile wavered. The lights flickered a third time. I didn't drink. The air felt heavier, thicker. My dad's laughter stumbled mid-sentence. The chandelier above us buzzed. I set the glass down and folded my hands, my face calm, my heart wild. No one spoke for several seconds. Then the music started again, soft and distant. Diana leaned close to my dad and whispered something. He nodded, his jaw tight. Eden looked from one to the other, confused. I reached for my phone under the table, thumb hovering over the message Harris had sent earlier. The screen glowed faintly in the dim light. "Don't eat anything. They know." I pressed save. Dinner ended in scattered conversation and fake laughter. When we finally stood, my dad hugged me, his cologne sharp, unfamiliar. "Drive safe," he said. Diana kissed my cheek. Her perfume was cloying, almost chemical. I smiled. Always. Outside, the night was cold. Snow drifted across the parking lot. I stood by my car for a long time, breathing in the silence. Through the window, I could still see them inside, their figures blurred by glass and distance. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "She knows what you found. Be careful." I turned toward the dark street. Somewhere a car engine started. The lights from the restaurant flickered once more, casting a brief shimmer across the snow. I took one step forward, then another, the note still folded in my hand. I wasn't going to run, not this time. The chair at the end of the table was empty. It had always been my mom's chair. No one ever sat there after she died. Even now, years later, it stayed untouched. Like a ghost no one wanted to disturb. I used to think that was respect, but tonight it felt like guilt carved into wood. The candlelight flickered across it, and for a second I could almost see her sitting there, her hand resting on the edge, her smile patient and tired. That image clung to me as I walked back into the house after the dinner, my heels echoing on the hardwood floor. The walls smelled the same, a mix of polish and old perfume. Diana filled the air with roses and lavender, her favorite scents, but underneath it there was still something faintly familiar. My mom's vanilla lotion, maybe, or just the memory of it refusing to fade. I paused by the stairs and looked back toward the dining room. The plates were gone, the table cleared. Only that chair remained untouched, waiting. In my room upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the same red dress from dinner. The note was in my hand, the paper soft from how tightly I had folded it. "Don't eat anything. They know." My stomach twisted every time I read it. Who were they? And what exactly did they know? A knock came at the door. I froze, then slipped the note into my purse before answering. Harris stood there, his white chef jacket half unbuttoned, his eyes shadowed. "We need to talk," he said quietly. I stepped aside. He closed the door behind him, glancing down the hallway before he spoke. "You shouldn't have come back tonight," he said. I frowned. "What do you mean?" He sat on the armchair near the window, rubbing his hands together. "This house, it remembers things, and people forget." "That's not an answer," I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He looked up at me, then his eyes tired but alert. "The same thing happened before," he said softly. "The same bottle, the same smile." The room tilted slightly. "You mean my mom?" He nodded once. "I told your dad not to open that wine that night. He said I was being paranoid. But when she fell sick the next morning, I knew." I felt my throat close. "What happened after they said heart failure?" "That's what the coroner signed off on. But I saw the report before it disappeared from the files. Traces of arsenic." The word hit me like ice water. Arsenic. I wanted to scream but couldn't. My hands gripped the bedpost. "You never told anyone." He shook his head. "I tried, but your dad had friends, lawyers. I was just the cook." I stared at him, every piece of my childhood rearranging itself into something darker. "And tonight, why warn me now? Because I saw her do it again," he said. "Diana." He nodded. "She brought that wine herself. It wasn't from the restaurant's cellar," I checked. "She made sure no one else touched the bottle before pouring." My pulse thudded in my ears. I thought of the way she smiled, the slow pour, the red glint in the glass, the perfect imitation of care. Why would she do this? Harris hesitated. "Because you came back. You reminded them of what they did, and she knows I know." He stood up, pulling something from his pocket. A small folded envelope, old and yellowed. "She wrote this the night before she died," he said. "She asked me to give it to you when the time was right." My fingers shook as I took it. The paper was soft, the ink faded. Inside was a single line in my mom's handwriting. "If anything happens to me, trust your instincts." I read it twice, the letters blurring. Harris watched me silently. "Your mom loved you more than anything," he said. "She told me once that you'd be the only one brave enough to see things as they are." My eyes burned. I pressed the note to my chest. "You should leave this house," he said. "Go tonight. Don't come back." I shook my head. "No, I need to know." He sighed. "I thought you might say that." When he left, I sat in the dark, listening to the faint hum of the heater, the creaks of the old house settling. My mind was a blur of memories. Mom standing at the stove stirring soup, the sound of her laughter drifting through the kitchen, the way she would hum softly when she thought no one was listening. I remembered her voice last Christmas. "Be kind, Kat, even when they aren't." I wanted to be kind, but kindness was a language no one in this family spoke anymore. I changed into jeans and a sweater, then went downstairs. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I stopped at the dining room door. The lights were off, but moonlight spilled across the table. That empty chair glowed pale, almost alive. I walked in and sat where my mom used to sit. The wood was cool beneath my hand. I could almost feel the grooves of her wedding ring carved faintly into the armrest. Maybe that was my imagination, maybe not. The silence pressed in, and my thoughts circled back to the report Harris mentioned. Arsenic. The word wouldn't leave me. I stood and crossed into the kitchen. The faint smell of soap and roasted meat lingered. Harris's prep station was spotless. I opened a drawer, then another. In the third one near the spice rack, I found what I hadn't been looking for, a small box tucked behind a stack of linen napkins. Inside was a plastic bag labeled with a date from 15 years ago. My mom's name was scribbled in blue ink, inside a report folded in half. My heart pounded. I unfolded it slowly. The text was smudged but readable. Cause of death, acute arsenic poisoning. I stared at it until the letters blurred. I heard a noise behind me. The swing of a door, the shuffle of feet. I shoved the paper back into the drawer and turned. Diana stood there wearing her silk robe, holding a glass of water. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Just getting some air," I said. She smiled faintly. "I know it's hard coming back here. This house has ghosts." I met her eyes. "Maybe it has murderers too." Her smile faltered just a fraction. "What did you say? Nothing." "I just meant memories." She stepped closer, her perfume sharp. "You look tired, dear. You should rest." "I will." She lingered a moment, her gaze flicking toward the counter where the drawer sat closed. Then she turned and walked out. When she was gone, I exhaled slowly. My legs felt weak. I stayed up until dawn reading that report again and again. My mom hadn't died by accident, and my dad had helped bury the truth. The next morning, the house looked different. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, soft and deceitful. My dad sat in the kitchen with his coffee, reading the paper as if nothing had happened. "Sleep well, sweetheart, fine," I said. He looked at me over his glasses. "Harris tells me you were in the kitchen late." I froze. I didn't think Harris would tell him anything. "He said you were looking for a snack," my dad continued. "You always did have a sweet tooth." I forced a smile. "Old habits." He nodded, sipped his coffee. "You know your mom loved that chair by the window. Said it made her feel close to the garden. I can't bring myself to sit there. Neither could I." Diana entered, then dressed in pale blue, her hair in place. "Morning, darling," she said to me, her tone too bright. "Breakfast?" "No thanks. I'm not hungry." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You didn't eat much last night either." I smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just cautious." Something flickered across her face, gone before I could name it. Later I went outside. The snow was thin now, the air sharp. The garden stretched behind the house, the pond frozen solid. I walked to the old oak tree at the edge of the yard, the one my mom used to sit under with a book. I touched the bark rough beneath my fingertips and whispered a promise. "I'll finish this." Inside I heard voices. My dad and Diana, low but tense. I crept closer to the open study door. "She's suspicious," Diana was saying. "She always was," my dad replied, "but she won't find anything. You can't be sure." He sighed. "Harris knows better than to talk." My stomach tightened. I stepped back, careful not to make a sound. The conversation ended abruptly. I went upstairs and closed my door. My mind was racing, but the fear was fading, replaced by clarity. Harris's warning wasn't just about danger. It was about history repeating itself. I pulled out my laptop and turned it on. The hum of the machine steadied me. I opened a blank document and began typing notes, everything I'd seen, heard, and found. The note at dinner, the vial, the report, the conversation. It felt strange writing it down like evidence. But maybe that was the point. My mom's story had been erased because no one kept proof. I wouldn't make the same mistake. Hours passed. The sky dimmed. I looked at the clock, 5:30. I'd been sitting there all day. My reflection in the window looked older, colder. The door creaked. Harris stepped inside, holding a tray with tea. "You shouldn't be here," I said softly. He set the tray down. "I know, but there's something you need to see." He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. The screen showed a video feed from a small camera. The image was grainy, but clear enough. The kitchen. Diana standing near the sink, holding a small bottle, pouring something into a cup. My chest tightened. "When was this? Last night?" he said. "After you left." I looked at him. "Why show me this now?" "Because she's not finished," he said. A chill went through me. He leaned closer. "I can't protect you if you stay." I met his eyes. "I'm not leaving." He nodded slowly, understanding. "Then be careful." After he left, I sat in the dark for a long time. The glow from my laptop, the only light. My mom's letter lay open beside me, her words etched into my thoughts. "Trust your instincts." I knew now what that meant. I shut the computer and stared at the empty chair outside my room, the one Diana had placed in the hallway years ago. A decoration, she called it. But tonight it looked like something else. A reminder. A promise. I whispered into the silence. "I trust them now, Mom. I really do." Downstairs, the lights flickered once, then steadied. The glass of red wine still sat where I left it untouched, a mirror of blood beneath the morning light. I stood by the dining room doorway, watching how the sun caught its surface, how the liquid shimmered like it had its own pulse. The table had been cleared, but that glass remained deliberate, waiting. I knew Diana had left it there on purpose. She wanted me to see it, to feel watched. I walked closer and leaned in, breathing in the faint bitter scent. It was metallic, not like the wine I remembered from before. My mom used to say wine should breathe, but this one felt like it was alive for the wrong reason. Diana's voice startled me. "Couldn't sleep either," she said softly. I straightened, turning to see her standing in the doorway, a silk robe wrapped tight around her waist. Her eyes were calm, too calm. "I just came to get my bag," I said. She smiled, her lips painted that same rose color she wore every day. "You always were an early riser, like your mom." The mention of my mom made my stomach twist. I said nothing, only reached for my clutch on the chair. She stepped forward, resting one hand on the table near the wine glass. "Such a shame she isn't here to see how lovely you've become," she said. I met her gaze. "Some people don't deserve to be remembered, Diana." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened. Then she laughed softly. "You've got her fire, that's for sure. Be careful it doesn't burn you too." I walked out without another word. Upstairs, I closed the door and locked it. My reflection in the mirror looked foreign, like I had aged overnight. I took a deep breath, reached for my phone, and scrolled through the messages. Nothing new. Harris hadn't texted. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he was being watched. The note was still in my purse, creased from how many times I had folded and unfolded it. Don't eat anything. They know. I laid it on the desk beside my laptop, the paper a physical reminder of the danger I was now part of. I turned on my computer, the soft hum breaking the silence. I needed proof, something beyond a note or Harris's words. If the arsenic report existed once, there had to be a trace of it somewhere. I typed my mom's name into a search bar, then her death certificate number. Nothing, just a blank page. My phone buzzed suddenly, a message from Harris. Kitchen, now. I grabbed my sweater and went. The hallway was empty, the light outside the window gray and heavy. In the kitchen, Harris stood near the counter, his face pale. He motioned for me to close the door. I did. What happened? He held up a small glass vial sealed with tape. Inside, a clear liquid shimmered faintly. Found this in the trash near the sink, he whispered. My pulse quickened. Is that what I think it is? He nodded. I ran a quick test with a strip I keep for food checks. It reacted. Arsenic in trace amounts. I stared at the vial, my breath catching. She really tried to do it again. Harris rubbed his temples. She's careful. More careful than before, but she's nervous. When people get nervous, they slip. I leaned against the counter, my hands shaking. How did you know back then about my mom? He hesitated, then reached into his apron pocket and pulled out a folded photo. It showed him and my mom standing by the old kitchen stove, both smiling. She used to come here after dinner, he said. Talk to me about the business, about you. Said she was worried about your dad, that he wasn't the man he used to be. He paused, looking at the photo. Then one night she came in pale as a ghost. Said she found something in his study, a document about transferring the company shares into Diana's name. She said she'd confront him after Christmas. I felt the world tilt again, but she never got that chance. He nodded slowly. She drank from that same bottle you saw last night. I swallowed hard. So you think Dad knew Harris didn't answer right away? He just looked down at the vial, his jaw tight. I think silence can be guilt too, he said finally. I turned away, my mind reeling. Silence. That word had followed me all night. My mom's death, the report, Harris's warnings. All of it wrapped in quietness. What should I do? I asked softly. Harris looked up at me. Leave. Or fight. But if you fight, do it smart. I met his eyes. I'm not leaving. He nodded once, like he had expected that. Then you'll need to see this. He walked to the pantry and opened a small, locked cabinet. Inside were old ledgers, notebooks, and receipts. From the back, he pulled out a manila folder. Inside was a copy of a medical report. I saved the original test your mom requested before she died, he said. It never made it to her doctor. My fingers trembled as I took it. The header read County Toxicology Department. Below it, my mom's name, and then the words positive for arsenic trace in blood sample. I felt tears prick my eyes. She knew. She tried to get help. I folded the paper carefully and looked at him. Why did you keep it? Because I promised her, he said quietly. My throat tightened. What promise? If anything happened to her, I was to protect you. A cold silence filled the room. He looked down. I failed her once. I won't fail her again. I swallowed, trying to steady my voice. She left me too soon. He met my eyes. Then maybe it's time you finish what she started. I left the kitchen with the folder clutched to my chest. Upstairs, I sat on the floor, reading every word on that page until I could recite it. The truth was heavy, but it steadied me. It gave me purpose. Around noon, I heard Diana's heels clicking down the hallway. She stopped outside my room, knocked twice. You're not coming down for lunch. Not hungry. You barely ate last night either, she said, her tone laced with fake concern. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Maybe I'm just careful. There was a pause. Then her voice softened. You should really try the soup. Harris made it special. I waited until I heard her footsteps fade, then went to the window. The garden outside glowed under thin sunlight. My mom loved that garden. She used to say the flowers listened better than people. I wondered if they still remembered her. I went downstairs later when the house felt empty. The dining room smelled of broth. On the table sat a single bowl of soup. I stared at it, the steam curling upward. Harris's warning echoed in my mind. Don't eat. I picked up a spoon, dipped it in just enough to taste the edge of the liquid, then stopped. Something metallic lingered in the air. I set the spoon down and took the bowl to the sink. The window over it looked out toward the garden. I poured the soup down the drain. The smell rose faint and bitter. Behind me, the floor creaked. Diana's voice was soft. Wasteful habit, isn't it? I turned slowly. She stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes cold. I wasn't hungry, I said. She smiled. That's a shame. I thought you'd enjoy something warm. Her gaze lingered on the empty bowl, then she stepped closer. You really should learn to trust your family, Catherine. I forced a smile. I'm learning. When she left, I exhaled shakily. My hands were still damp from the steam. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk with the toxicology report, the note, and the vial. Evidence, but not enough to bring to anyone yet. I needed more. Something undeniable. I remembered the small lab kit I kept in my car, left over from my last project. It could test chemicals in water and food. Maybe it would work. I slipped on a coat and crept down to the garage. The house was quiet. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the distant creak of wood. In the garage, the cold hit me instantly. My breath came out in white clouds. I opened the car trunk, found the kit, and carried it back inside. In the kitchen, I poured a few drops of the wine into a small sample tube. I added the testing agent. The liquid turned violet within seconds. Arsenic confirmed. I stared at the color, my heart beating fast but steady. Proof it was real, the same poison that had killed my mom. I leaned against the counter, closing my eyes. The realization felt both terrifying and freeing. For years, I had lived under the shadow of lies. Now I had something solid, something undeniable. But what to do with it? The image of my mom came again, her soft voice in my memory. Outsmart them. That was the answer. Not confrontation, control. I cleaned the counter, disposed of the samples, and locked the vial away. Then I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where Diana had stood earlier. If they wanted to use poison, I would use fear. The next morning, I found Harris outside by the service door, smoking a cigarette. I hadn't seen him smoke in years. She's getting desperate, he said, without looking at me. I know. He flicked the ash onto the snow. You have proof now. Yes, but proof doesn't matter if no one believes it. He nodded. Then what will you do? I looked at him. The only thing they won't expect. He studied my face for a moment. Then he said quietly, Be careful. I will. Inside, the morning light spilled through the windows, bright and cold. I looked at my reflection in the glass. My mom's eyes stared back. The fear that had once ruled me was gone. In its place was something sharper. That afternoon, I packed the report, the vial, and the note into a small box and locked it in my suitcase. Then I opened my laptop again, setting up a new file. On the screen, I typed 3 words, the dinner replay. If they wanted to repeat the past, so would I. But this time, I'd be ready. The light flickered once, faint but deliberate. Morning arrived with the kind of stillness that felt wrong, like the air itself was holding its breath. The snow outside had frozen into a thin crust that glistened under the pale sun. I stood at the kitchen window, my fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. The steam curled upward, fading into the cold light. Every sound in the house felt amplified, from the creak of the floorboards to the faint hum of the refrigerator. Harris's words from the night before replayed in my mind. Leave or fight. But if you fight, do it smart. I wasn't leaving. Down the hall, I heard the faint shuffle of slippers. Diana appeared, her hair perfectly curled, her robe cinched like armor. She moved with the grace of someone who believed she was untouchable. You're up early, she said, voice light. I couldn't sleep. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me. Her nails tapped the porcelain mug in a slow rhythm. I used to find that sound soothing when I was a child. Now it scraped against my nerves. Your dad's out for a meeting, she said after a moment. Business never stops, not even for holidays. I stared at the window. Must be important. Always is, she said, smiling. He built this family from nothing, you know. I met her eyes. He built something, all right. Her smile tightened. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just conversation. She studied me, her expression flickering before she looked away. You remind me so much of your mom, she said quietly. Always questioning, always suspicious. It's exhausting, isn't it? I didn't answer. She leaned forward. People who dig for truth usually find dirt. Then she stood and left her robe sweeping behind her like a whisper. I exhaled the tension, leaving me in a shaky wave. I took 1 sip of the cold coffee and dumped the rest down the sink. Then I turned on my phone. No new messages. I texted Harris. We need to talk. The reply came almost immediately. Pantry, 5 minutes. I slipped out of the kitchen and walked through the narrow hallway that led to the pantry. The scent of flour and spices lingered in the air. Harris was already there, his hands covered in dough, his eyes tired. They're watching you, he said softly. I know. He wiped his hands on a towel and looked at me. I can't stay much longer. Diana's been asking questions. Where will you go? He shook his head. Doesn't matter. What matters is you have everything you need now. I frowned. You mean the report? He nodded. And the video. My stomach clenched. What video? He hesitated, then pulled a small flash drive from his pocket. Your dad had the security cameras removed from the main rooms years ago, but he forgot about the one in the cellar. It caught everything the night your mom died. I made a copy before it was erased. My pulse roared in my ears. Have you seen it? I saw enough? He handed me the flash drive, his hand trembling. Keep this safe. If anything happens to me, make sure someone sees it. Harris, I started, but he was already shaking his head. No, don't say anything. Just promise me. I nodded slowly. He gave me a sad smile. You have her eyes, you know. That made my chest tighten. I wanted to ask more, but footsteps sounded in the hall. Harris's expression changed instantly. He turned back to his work, kneading dough as if nothing had happened. Diana entered, her perfume announcing her before her voice. Harris, she said sweetly, I hope you're making something special tonight. We'll have guests. Yes, ma'am, he said without looking up. She turned to me. You'll join us, of course. Of course, I said, forcing a smile. She studied me, then glanced at Harris before leaving. The moment she disappeared, I looked at him again. He didn't stop kneading, but his jaw was tight. Be careful, he murmured. Tonight will be important. I slipped the flash drive into my pocket and left. In my room, I plugged it into my laptop, my fingers shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. The screen blinked, then a folder appeared. One file, dated 15 years ago. I opened it. The footage was grainy black and white. The cellar was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the walls. My mom sat at the small table with a half-filled glass of wine in front of her. She looked tired, her hair pulled back, her hands folded. My dad stood across from her, his expression unreadable. They spoke, but there was no sound. The camera had no audio. My dad's hand moved toward her, gesturing sharply. She reached for her glass, took a sip, and winced. He stepped closer, said something else, and she shook her head. Then her body jerked once, twice. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered. I covered my mouth. My eyes blurred with tears. My dad stepped forward, caught her before she hit the ground. For a moment he held her. Then he looked toward the camera directly at it and turned it off. The screen went black. I stared at the blank screen for what felt like hours. My chest hurts, my throat dry. Every image burned into me like fire. My mom's final moment, my dad's calmness, his precision. The sound of the house returned slowly. The ticking clock, the wind brushing against the window. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. There was no doubt now. He knew. He always knew. I paced the room, unable to sit. Every memory I had of him, his laughter, his stories, his advice now felt like a mask. I remembered the way he hugged me after her funeral, how he said she'd want us to stay strong. I had believed him. I had built my life around that lie. The sound of tires crunching outside broke through my thoughts. I looked out the window and saw his car pulling into the driveway. He was home. I shoved the flash drive back into my pocket and shut off the lights. I didn't want him to see my face. He came inside a few minutes later, his voice echoing from the hall. Where is everyone? Diana's laugh followed. Probably hiding from your temper. I stayed upstairs listening as they talked. Then I heard my name. She's been asking too many questions, Diana said. She's grieving, he replied. Grief doesn't make you snoop through drawers, Marcus. There was a pause. Then his voice lowered. You need to calm down. She's my daughter. And she's dangerous, Diana snapped. She knows. I can see it in her eyes. I gripped the edge of the windowsill. The truth was out. She was right. I did know. Later, after the house went quiet, I crept downstairs. The living room glowed faintly from the dying fire. My dad's briefcase sat open on the couch. I knelt beside it and began searching. Inside were papers, bank records, and a small velvet box. When I opened it, my breath caught. My mom's ring, the one she wore every day. I slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Footsteps sounded behind me. Couldn't sleep. My dad's voice was calm, almost kind. I turned slowly, just restless. He nodded, glancing at the ring. That's a nice piece. It was Mom's. He smiled faintly. Then I'm glad you have it. His eyes lingered on mine a second too long. I stood. I should get some rest. He nodded again. Sleep well, sweetheart. When I reached the top of the stairs, I turned back. He was still standing there, staring into the fire. In my room, I locked the door and slid the flash drive under the mattress. My reflection in the window was pale eyes red from tears and anger. I whispered softly, he killed her. The next morning, the house was unusually quiet. No clinking dishes, no footsteps. I went downstairs and found a note on the table. Family dinner tonight, 7 sharp. The handwriting was my dad's. I stared at it for a long time. My pulse quickened. Another dinner, the same ritual. I felt something shift inside me. Fear gave way to resolve. I spent the day preparing. I checked my laptop battery, copied the video to a cloud drive, then hid the flash drive inside my suitcase. If something happened to me, the truth wouldn't die with me. By late afternoon, I could hear the sounds of preparation from the kitchen. Harris moving pans, the clatter of silver. I went downstairs quietly. He looked up when I entered. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded. "Then you know what you're dealing with?" "Yes." He set down the knife he was holding. "You could still leave." "I can't." He sighed. "Then you'll have to control the table." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at me steadily. "They expect you to be afraid. Don't be. Act like you know more than they think. Let them make the mistake." I swallowed hard. "And if they don't, then make one for them." That evening, the house filled with the smell of roasted meat and candle wax. The table was set again, identical to the first night. The same plates, the same glasses, even the same red wine bottle waiting near the center. Diana stood by the fireplace laughing at something my dad said. Her voice was high and sharp like broken glass. I walked in calmly and took my seat. My dad smiled. "There she is." "Ready for round two always," I said. Diana poured the wine, her movements graceful and deliberate. When she reached my glass, I placed my hand over it. "I'll pour my own," I said. Her eyes flicked up. "Of course, dear." I took the bottle and filled my glass halfway, watching how her gaze followed every movement. Then I lifted it slightly. "To my family," I said. They both smiled, echoing the toast. But I didn't drink. The lights flickered once, a brief pulse across the chandelier. I felt the world slow down around me. My dad's hand rested on the table, his wedding ring catching the light. Diana leaned back, her expression unreadable. I smiled. "To the future," I said softly. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence that comes when everyone is waiting for something to happen. I woke before dawn, the sky outside still a dull gray. My heart was restless, my thoughts loud. The night before had ended with that same flicker of light, the same toast, the same pretending. I had smiled through it all, through Diana's glassy laughter and my dad's half-drunken cheer, but every word had been an act. I knew now what kind of people they were. I knew what they had done. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the suitcase under the desk. The flash drive was still hidden inside, along with my mom's toxicology report and the note that had started everything. I reached for the small box where I kept her ring and held it for a long time. The silver felt cool against my palm. I slipped it onto my finger. Downstairs I could hear faint movement, footsteps, cabinets closing, the familiar rhythm of a house waking up. I glanced at the clock. 6:45, too early for anyone else to be up except Harris. I went down quietly. The smell of coffee filled the air. Harris stood by the stove, stirring something in a small pot. His back was to me. He turned when he heard me. "You should still be sleeping," he said. "Couldn't," I replied. He poured coffee into 2 mugs and handed me one. The warmth felt grounding. "You looked calm last night," he said softly. "Maybe too calm." "They didn't notice," I said. He shook his head. "They noticed everything, especially her." "Diana." He nodded. "She asked me afterward if I thought you seemed different." "I told her you were tired, thank you." He leaned against the counter, watching me. "You have the same look your mom had before she told me she wasn't afraid anymore." I met his eyes. "I'm not afraid either." He smiled faintly. "Good. But don't mistake calm for safety." I took a sip of coffee, the bitterness steadying me. "I'm not safe," I said. "But neither are they." He studied me for a moment, then sighed. "I'll make sure the cameras are ready." "Cameras?" He nodded. "I told you before. There are a few hidden ones still working. I never took them out. We're dining room, pantry, and the hallway near your dad's study. The old security system connects to a private drive. Only I know the password." A flicker of hope rose in my chest. "You can record tonight. Already planned to. But you'll have to give me the signal." "What kind of signal?" he thought for a moment. "When the lights flicker twice, the system will start recording." "How do we make that happen?" He smiled slightly. "I wired the switch to a motion sensor near the pantry. I just need to calibrate it. When you walk by slowly, the lights will flicker and the cameras will start." I nodded slowly. "So all I need to do is walk by." He lowered his voice. "Once it starts, don't stop the scene. Let them talk. Let them show who they are." I understood. The rest of the morning passed in heavy silence. Diana was polite, too polite, offering me breakfast I didn't take. My dad left for the office, leaving his usual trail of cigar smoke and aftershave. I watched from the window as his car disappeared down the drive. The moment he was gone, Diana dropped her smile. "You really do bring tension into a house," she said, her tone light but sharp. "Maybe the house already had it." She turned her eyes, narrowing slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said. Just conversation. She studied me, lips tightening, then left the room. I could feel her watching from the hallway mirror as I poured myself water. The air between us was thin and dangerous. Around noon, I heard a car pull into the driveway again. I looked through the curtain. My dad was home early. He got out of the car with a woman I didn't recognize, younger, sharply dressed. They spoke briefly, then he led her toward the side door. I watched as Diana came rushing out, her robe still half-tied. The argument that followed was muffled but visible through the glass. The woman pointed toward me, or maybe toward the house. My dad raised his hand, ending it. The woman turned and left. I backed away from his window, my heart racing. Harris appeared behind me. You saw it too, he said. Who was she? His assistant. The one who manages the company accounts. What would she be doing here on a Saturday? He hesitated. Delivering documents maybe, or something else? Later I overheard Diana shouting in the study. Her voice cracked with fury. You can't protect her forever, Marcus. She'll ruin everything. My dad's reply was low, controlled. Keep your voice down. I slipped back upstairs. The walls felt thinner than ever, like every secret inside them was pressing to get out. That evening, Harris knocked on my door. It's ready, he said. The cameras are live. I followed him downstairs. He showed me the small blinking light near the pantry ceiling. The system's active. When you pass here during dinner, they'll start. I took a deep breath. Then it's tonight. He nodded. Be careful. When dinner time came, the atmosphere was strange, almost cheerful. The dining table was dressed with silver and candles, too formal for just the three of us. Diana wore a red silk dress. My dad's cufflinks gleamed under the chandelier. You look lovely, sweetheart, he said when I entered. Thank you, I said. I kept my tone even. Diana poured the wine again, her movements elegant, rehearsed. I noticed her hands trembling slightly. My dad raised his glass. To family again, he said, to forgiveness. I looked at him, searching for meaning. Forgiveness. The word tasted bitter. To truth, I said softly. He frowned, but smiled. Truth, then. I let the moment stretch, then placed my napkin on the table. I'll grab the dessert from the pantry. Diana's gaze sharpened. You don't need to, she said quickly. Harris can do that. I smiled at her. I don't mind. I need to stretch my legs anyway. As I walked past the sensor, the lights flickered twice. Harris's cue. I returned to the table, carrying the dessert tray, placing it carefully in the center. The air shifted. I could feel the tension tightening around us. Diana spoke first. You know, Catherine, it's strange how much you resemble her. I met her eyes. My mom, yes. Every time you look at me, I see her disappointment. I smiled faintly. Then I guess you're seeing clearly. My dad's fork clattered against the plate. Enough. This is Christmas. Diana ignored him. She never respected boundaries either, did she? Always questioning, always digging. I leaned forward. Maybe she had a reason. Diana's lips curved. You think you know something, don't you? I didn't blink. I know enough. The silence that followed was sharp. My dad cleared his throat. Let's stop this, he said. But Diana's eyes were on me, bright with something close to hatred. You don't know what loyalty means, she said. No, I said. I only know what the truth looks like. I reached for the wine bottle, refilled my glass slowly, the red liquid catching the candlelight. I let the silence stretch until even my dad looked uneasy. Then I raised the glass. To loyalty, I said softly. Diana's hand froze on her fork. My dad looked from her to me. What are you implying? I met his gaze. That loyalty doesn't erase murder. The words dropped between us like stones. My dad's face went pale. Diana's eyes widened. For a moment, no one moved. Then she laughed too loudly. My dear, what an imagination you have. I smiled calm. Maybe. But I have proof. Her laughter stopped. My dad's voice was low. Proof of what? I set my glass down. The truth about how Mom died. He stared at me, his jaw tightening. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Stood up. The camera above the pantry blinked softly, recording every movement. Diana rose too, her voice sharp. Sit down, Catherine. I shook my head. No. I've been sitting quietly for years. She took a step toward me. You're making a mistake. I met her eyes. Maybe. But it's the same one you made 15 years ago. My dad slammed his hand against the table. Enough! The sound echoed through the room. The chandelier shook. I stared at him. You let her do it, didn't you? He didn't speak. His silence was the answer. Diana looked at him, shock flashing across her face. You told me she would never know. He turned on her. And you told me it would be quick. The argument exploded, words tangled into accusations. I stood back, letting it happen, every second of it caught on camera. Harris appeared briefly at the doorway, his face pale. He gave a small nod. The plan was working. When I looked back, Diana had gone still. Her eyes darted to the bottle. She grabbed it and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, the red spreading like blood across white paint. She was breathing hard. "Do you think anyone will believe you?" she hissed. I smiled. "They won't need to." My dad looked at me, something like fear in his eyes. "What did you do?" "Nothing," I said quietly. "Just turned the lights on." He frowned, confused. Then the lights flickered again. The lights flickered again, longer this time, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The chandelier trembled slightly, casting broken shards of gold across the table. Diana froze, one hand gripping the edge of the chair, the other still sticky from the wine that had splattered across her skin. My dad stared at the ceiling as if the problem were mechanical, something he could fix with money or denial, but I knew better. The flicker wasn't an accident, it was Harris's signal. The cameras were recording. I sat down slowly, folding my hands in my lap. My heart was beating fast, but my face remained calm. I could feel the weight of my mom's ring against my skin, its cold metal grounding me. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my dad broke the silence. "What are you doing, Catherine?" His voice was quiet, but there was a warning beneath it, the same tone he used when I was a child and had said something inconvenient in public. I met his eyes. "Watching." He frowned. "Watching what?" "The truth," I said. Diana laughed, but the sound cracked halfway through. "This is absurd. You think you can accuse us of something after all these years?" I tilted my head. "I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just letting the truth speak for itself." She looked at me sharply. "What is the truth?" The lights flickered again. My dad glanced up, irritation flashing across his face. "Harris needs to fix that wiring," he muttered. "He will," I said softly. "He's good at fixing things." Diana looked uneasy. Her fingers tapped the table faster now. "You think this is a game, Catherine," she said. "Do you have any idea what your dad has done for you, for this family?" I looked at him. "Have you?" His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "I know enough." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "This conversation is over." But I didn't move. "No, it isn't. It's been over for 15 years. You just never told anyone." His eyes met mine, dark and unreadable. Diana's voice broke through. "Stop this, both of you. She's trying to provoke us." I turned to her, smiling faintly. "I don't have to. You're doing that yourself." My dad took a deep breath, forcing calm into his voice. "Whatever you think you know, it ends tonight." He turned away, heading toward the side cabinet where he kept the decanter. I watched him pour himself another drink, his movements smooth, rehearsed. Diana followed him, whispering urgently, "You're letting her control this, Marcus. She's just like her mom." He spun on her, his tone sharp. "Don't say her name." The air between them snapped like static. I sat back, studying them. It was strange how quickly their masks slipped. For years I had thought of them as perfect, untouchable. Now they looked small, cornered. Diana turned toward me again, her voice low. "You want to know what happened?" "Fine, your mom was sick. She drank too much, she didn't take care of herself." My throat tightened. "That's the story you told everyone. Because it was true." "No, she didn't die because she was weak. She died because someone wanted her gone." Diana's lips curved. "You think I did it?" I held her gaze. "I know you did." She laughed softly. "Prove it." The words hung between us. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My dad set his glass down, his expression heavy. "This has gone far enough." I nodded. "You're right. It has." I reached for my phone on the table. The recording light glowed red. Diana noticed first. Her face was drained of color. "You're recording this." I met her eyes. "You're recording yourselves." My dad stepped forward, his voice rising. "Turn it off." I didn't move. The world outside had gone silent. Even the snow seemed to stop falling. I could feel the faint vibration of my heartbeat in my ears. He slammed his hand on the table. I said, "Turn it off." "No." He stared at me, stunned. "No," I repeated. "For once, you don't get to control the story." Diana's voice trembled. "This is madness." I leaned back. "Maybe. But it's my kind of madness." The chandelier flickered again. Harris was watching, waiting. I knew he was recording every second, every word. My dad's face changed. The calm slipped away, revealing something colder. He picked up his glass, turned it slowly in his hand, and said in a quiet voice, "You always were your mom's daughter." "Thank you," I said. He smiled without warmth. She never understood boundaries either. And you never understood love, I said. He threw the glass against the wall. The sound shattered through the room sharp as a gunshot. Wine splashed across the wallpaper, red streaks running down like blood. Diana gasped. Marcus. He ignored her. You think this little show will change anything? You think anyone will believe you over me? I stayed seated. They won't have to believe me. They'll see it. He took a step closer. What did you do? I met his eyes. Nothing you didn't teach me. His hand twitched like he wanted to grab the phone, but Diana stopped him. Marcus, don't. I turned the screen toward them. The live stream timer glowed. Diana's voice broke. What is that proof? She lunged forward, but I stood and stepped back. The phone slipped into my pocket. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, I said quietly. My dad's voice was steady again, dangerously calm. You think you can destroy us? No, I said. I think you already did that yourselves. He stared at me for a long time, then turned away. The fire crackled in the hearth, the only sound. Diana stood frozen, her hands shaking. Finally, she whispered, You don't understand what you're doing. I do. I'm taking back what you stole. She laughed softly, brokenly. You're your mom all over again. She said the same thing to him. I looked at her. What did she say that she would tell? That she wasn't afraid anymore? And what did you do? Diana's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to. I just wanted her gone for a little while. The words hit me like a blade. My dad's voice cut in. Enough! He turned to her, fury flashing in his face. You couldn't even keep your mouth shut. Diana stepped back. Don't you dare blame me. You planned it. You brought the poison. Silence. I felt my breath catch. The chandelier flickered again. Harris's timing was perfect. Every word was being captured. You killed her, I said quietly. Both of you. My dad looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the front door slammed open. Harris stood there, his face pale. The police are on their way, he said. My dad froze. The police, Diana gasped. You called them? Harris shook his head. I didn't have to. Someone watching the stream did. The words hung in the air, unreal. I turned to him, shock flooding me. You streamed it. He nodded slightly. I had to. It was the only way to protect you. My dad's face turned crimson. You'll regret this, he said. All of you. Diana started crying, her voice sharp and broken. I didn't want it to happen like this, but it already had. The sound of sirens in the distance grew louder, cutting through the frozen night. Blue and red lights began to flash across the window panes. My dad sank into his chair, silent now, his eyes hollow. Diana backed against the wall, whispering to herself. I stood in the middle of the room, my heart pounding. The lights flickered one last time, the signal ending. When the officers entered, I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Harris handed over the footage. It's all here, he said quietly. One of the officers nodded and took the flash drive. As they led my dad away, he looked back at me. There was no anger now, only exhaustion. You think you've won, he said. I met his gaze. No, I think Mom finally did. Diana collapsed into a chair, sobbing. The sound echoed in the large room, hollow and small. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady. I walked to the window and placed my hand against the glass. My reflection stared back, pale and still. Behind me, Harris spoke quietly. It's over. I shook my head. Not yet. He frowned. What do you mean? I turned toward him. The truth has to live somewhere. It can't end with just tonight. He nodded, slowly understanding. I looked around the room one last time. The red stains on the wall, the broken glass, the flickering chandelier. Every piece of it felt like an echo of my mom's last moments. I whispered softly, Rest now. Then I turned off the lights. The snow had stopped by morning, leaving a white silence over everything. The house felt emptier than it ever had, though there were still people inside. Officers moved through the rooms, taking photos, collecting pieces of glass, sealing the bottle of wine into a plastic bag. Diana sat on the couch, a blanket around her shoulders, her eyes red and blank. My dad was gone. They had taken him away in the middle of the night. I stood by the window, watching the sun rise over the frozen yard, the same yard where my mom used to plant tulips every spring. For the first time, it didn't look peaceful. It looked like the truth was uncovered. Harris came in quietly, carrying a small tray with tea. You should drink something, he said. I turned from the window. Thank you. He set the tray down, his movements careful. The tremor in his hands was faint, but constant. He looked exhausted, older. They'll question you again, he said. You might want to rest before that. I nodded. The officers had been gentle but persistent, asking me to walk them through the night again and again. What was said, who moved where, who poured what. Every time my voice felt like it was coming from someone else. Did you tell them everything I asked? He hesitated. Enough. Enough means not everything I said. He looked at me, eyes tired. There's no need to say more than what they can understand. I sat down and held the cup, letting the steam touch my face. My mind felt empty and crowded at the same time. The video was evidence enough, the words they had spoken in that room. But what I couldn't stop hearing was my mom's voice. The way she used to say my name softly when I couldn't sleep. The way she would hum in the kitchen, the low rhythm that used to calm me. For the first time, that sound didn't feel like comfort. It felt like a warning I hadn't understood soon enough. Harris sat across from me. They'll go through everything he said. The finances, the records, the medical reports. It will all come out. I nodded slowly. And you? What will you do now? He looked away. I'll stay until it's done. Then I'll go. I made a promise. To her. He nodded. The front door opened, then a gust of cold air sweeping through the hall. 2 officers stepped inside, one of them holding a clipboard. Miss Ryan, we'll need you to come down to the station this afternoon. Of course, I said. They nodded and left as quietly as they came. After they were gone, I looked back at Harris. You said last night wasn't the end. What did you mean? He took a slow breath. You still have to decide what happens next. Truth is one thing. Justice is another. I frowned. Isn't that what we did? He met my eyes. The truth was shown. But justice needs to survive the noise that comes after. His words sat heavy between us. When I went upstairs, the hallway still smelled faintly of smoke from the fireplace. My mom's portrait hung at the end of the hall, dust gathered in the corners of the frame. I stopped in front of it, tracing the outline of her face with my eyes. She looked young, hopeful. I wondered if she would recognize me now. I sat on my bed, the suitcase still half-packed. The flash drive was inside, but I had made more copies. One on my laptop, another uploaded to a private drive. I couldn't take the risk of losing it. By noon, the house was empty. The officers had finished their sweep. Diana had been taken away for questioning, and Harris was in the kitchen, cleaning up what he could. The silence that followed felt like standing inside a church after the congregation had gone. I walked outside. The cold hit me sharp, the air clean and biting. The snow crunched under my boots. The garden stretched out before me, the bare branches of rose bushes sticking up through the frost. My mom's tulip beds were buried now, but I knew exactly where they were. I knelt and brushed away some of the snow, letting the frozen dirt sting my fingertips. I whispered quietly, "It's done, Mom." The wind shifted slightly, a soft sound moving through the trees. It felt like an answer. That afternoon at the station, the questions came again. A detective with kind eyes sat across from me, his notebook open. He asked about the dinner, about the wine, about the moment my dad and Diana started to argue. I told him everything I could remember. He listened, only interrupting to clarify small details. When I finished, he closed the notebook gently. "You did the right thing," he said, "but you understand this will take time." I nodded. I wasn't expecting quick. He studied me for a moment. "You seem calm. Most people wouldn't be." I looked at the table between us. "I've been living with ghosts for a long time. This just made them visible." He smiled faintly. "I'll be in touch." When I returned home, the sky was already turning blue-gray, the color of early evening. Harris was waiting by the fireplace, a small envelope in his hand. "What's that?" I asked. He handed it to me. "Found it in your dad's study." The paper was thick, old. Inside was a short letter written in my mom's handwriting. My throat tightened as I read it. "If you ever find this, I hope you know I tried to protect you. But I was afraid, not of dying, but of being forgotten. Don't let them write my story for me." I folded the letter carefully. She had written it before everything happened, maybe even the night before she died. Harris watched me silently. "She was braver than any of us," I said. He nodded. I placed the letter in my pocket. There was something I had to do. I went upstairs to the study, the same room where my dad had once told stories about business, about success. The bookshelves were lined with trophies, photos, and certificates. Every piece of paper is a lie wrapped in accomplishment. I pulled one photo from the shelf. It was the 3 of us at the lake years ago. My mom's smile looked strained, but I hadn't noticed then. I turned it over. On the back, my dad had written "Family Forever." The words made my chest ache. I placed the photo face down on the desk. Later, Harris joined me in the doorway. "The detectives called again," he said. "They found something in the car." I looked up. "What?" He hesitated. "A second vial, same compound as the first." I closed my eyes. "So he kept it." He nodded. The realization hit me harder than I expected. For years, he had lived with that evidence near him, maybe as insurance, maybe as control. It didn't matter now. When night came, the house grew quiet again. Harris went to rest in the guest room. I sat alone by the window watching the snow fall. The world outside was white and endless, but inside, everything was red and shadowed in memory. I thought of my mom's letter, of the last words she had written. "Don't let them write my story for me." That was when the idea came. If truth needed to survive the noise, then I would give it a voice. I opened my laptop, created a new document, and began to type. The title appeared first, The Silent Dinner. Then I wrote everything. The dinner, the note, the fear, the cameras, the confession. Every word, every moment. It felt like breathing again for the first time in years. When I finished, I uploaded it to a forum I used to read during sleepless nights. Stories about revenge, justice, karma. Places where people shared what they couldn't say aloud. I hit the post. The screen glowed softly in the dark, and for a moment, the house didn't feel haunted, it felt lighter. A few minutes later, a notification appeared. The first comment. Someone had written, "This can't be real," and then another. "If it is, she's a legend." I sat back, a small, tired smile forming. The truth was out there now, in the hands of strangers who didn't know my name but somehow understood everything I felt. I closed the laptop and looked toward the fireplace. The flames had burned low, just embers glowing faintly in the ash. Harris stepped into the room, rubbing his eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "No. Too much noise in my head." He nodded. "You did what needed to be done." "I know," I said. "But it still doesn't feel finished." "It will," he said. "Just not tonight." He went back to his room, and I stayed a while longer, listening to the faint crackle of the fire. The quiet was different now, not suffocating, not sharp, just quiet. I touched the ring on my finger and whispered softly, "I did it, Mom." Outside, the snow began to fall harder, erasing the footprints in the yard one by one. Confessions don't always happen in courtrooms. Sometimes they happen in rooms that still smell like wine and fear. The house looked the same from the outside that morning, but inside it felt hollow, stripped of lies. The chandelier above the dining table swayed slightly, catching the pale sunlight that slipped through the curtains. The stains on the wall had darkened overnight, the dried wine now a dull brown. I stood in the doorway, looking at the mess that used to be the center of our family's pride. The glasses, the plates, the silverware, all of it was proof now. Harris came in behind me, his steps slow. He held a small box in his hands, the kind used for evidence. "The officers forgot this," he said quietly. He opened it, revealing the vial. The liquid inside shimmered faintly clear and deadly. I felt my stomach tighten. "They'll take it when they come back," I said. He nodded. He looked tired, his eyes red from lack of sleep. He had stayed awake all night answering questions, replaying memories he'd tried to bury. "It's strange," he said after a moment. "The truth makes a mess, doesn't it?" I looked around the room. "It always does." He placed the box back on the table and straightened. "They'll want you to testify," he said. "I know." He hesitated. "You don't have to if you don't want to." I smiled faintly. "I've been silent long enough." He nodded once as if that settled something between us. Then he left me alone with the echoes. I walked to my dad's chair. The cushion was still indented, the air faintly carrying his cologne. For a moment I could almost hear his voice, calm and commanding. The way it had filled every room, it had always been that way. He talked, everyone else listened, but not anymore. I sat down slowly, my fingers tracing the edge of the table. My mom's ring caught the light, a small glint of silver in all the gray. I thought about how she must have felt that night 15 years ago, sitting right here, unaware of what waited in her glass. I wondered if she had felt the same unease I had at my own dinner, the same tightening in her chest, the same silence pressing against her ribs. Maybe she knew. Maybe she saw it coming and decided to look her killer in the eye anyway. The sound of a door closing broke through my thoughts. I turned and saw Diana standing in the hallway, her hair a tangled mess, her robe loose around her shoulders. Her face was pale, her eyes rimmed red. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "Neither should you." She laughed weakly. "They let me come back for a few hours. Said I needed to pack." I watched her walk into the room. Her steps were uneven, her hands trembling. She looked around the dining room like she didn't recognize it. "You did this," she said. "No," I said. "You did." Her lips trembled. "You could have stayed quiet. I could have," I said. "But then I would be just like him." She sank into a chair, her eyes filling. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I swear I didn't." "You poisoned her." She shook her head. "It was supposed to make her sick, not kill her. He told me it would pass, that she'd be fine." I stared at her. "You believed that?" She wiped her eyes. "I wanted her gone. I won't lie about that. But I didn't want her dead." Her words hung between us, fragile and awful. "He changed after that," she whispered. "Your dad? He said we'd built something worth protecting. but it was already broken. I leaned back in the chair. He always said loyalty was the most important thing. She laughed softly. Loyalty to himself. We sat in silence. The sound of wind brushed against the windows. You loved him, I said. Her eyes met mine. I thought I did, but love that starts in lies can't survive truth. I stood unable to look at her anymore. He killed her. You helped, and for years you both watched me grow up thinking it was natural, thinking loss was just part of life. She lowered her head. I can't undo it. No, I said. You can't. When I turned to leave, she grabbed my hand. Her skin was cold. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For everything. I pulled my hand away. Sorry doesn't change the truth. I walked out of the room. Her crying followed me down the hallway, a sound too late to matter. Upstairs, the light through the window was sharp and white. The snow outside had started to melt. I sat on my bed and opened my laptop. My post from the night before had already spread. Thousands of comments. People sharing their own stories. Betrayal, abuse, silence. It wasn't just mine anymore. The truth had multiplied, become something bigger. I scrolled through the messages until one caught my eye. It said, I wish I'd had your courage. My mom never got justice. I stared at those words for a long time. Courage. I wasn't sure that was the right word. It didn't feel like courage when I was shaking at that dinner table, or when I found the report, or when I saw my dad's face crumble under the weight of truth. It felt like survival. Harris knocked softly and opened the door. They're here again, he said. I nodded and followed him downstairs. Two detectives stood by the doorway, their expressions neutral. Miss Ryan, they said, we need your statement for the official record. I nodded. We also have something you might want to see. One of them handed me a tablet. On the screen was footage from the station. My dad sitting in an interrogation room. His face was drawn older than I remembered. He wasn't shouting, not angry, just quiet. The officer pressed play. My dad leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I loved her, he said. Your mom. But she was going to ruin everything. The words came out flat, almost rehearsed. He looked up at whoever was questioning him. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. I told Diana to stop, but she didn't listen. The detective's voice off-screen asked, So you blame her? He hesitated. I blame myself for trusting anyone. Then he leaned back, closing his eyes. Tell my daughter she was right. The recording ended. I handed the tablet back, my hands cold. The officer's voice softened. We thought you should see that. Thank you, I said quietly. When they left, I stayed by the door for a while. The silence of the house wrapped around me. But it didn't feel suffocating anymore. It felt clean, emptied of poison. Harris was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters. He looked up when I entered. You saw it? I nodded. He said you were right. I know. Harris sighed. What now? I don't know, I said. Maybe now I will start living with what's left. He nodded slowly. That's harder than revenge sometimes, maybe. But it's the only part that matters now. I walked to the window, watching the sunlight spill across the snow. The garden looked peaceful again. A few birds had returned, pecking at the bare ground. Life had a way of continuing no matter what. Later, I packed my things. I wasn't sure where I was going yet, only that I couldn't stay. The house had too many ghosts. Harris helped me carry my suitcase to the car. You'll come back someday, he said. Maybe, I said, when it feels like home again. He nodded and handed me an envelope. For when you're ready, he said. What is it, a key to the restaurant? It's yours now. She wanted you to have it. I took it, my throat tightening. Thank you. He smiled faintly. Your mom would be proud. I drove away slowly, the tires crunching over ice. In the rearview mirror, the house grew smaller until it disappeared behind the trees. By the time I reached the main road, the sun had dipped low. The light turned golden, catching the snow in soft, glittering waves. I rolled down the window, letting the cold air fill the car. For the first time in years, I didn't feel trapped. That night, I checked into a small inn outside town. The room was simple, quiet. I set my suitcase on the floor and opened Harris's envelope again. Inside, along with the key, was a note written in his neat handwriting. She trusted you more than anyone. Don't forget why. I placed it beside my mom's letter on the nightstand. The two pieces of paper side by side felt like a conversation finally completed. I lay down, closing my eyes. The sound of snow tapping against the window lulled me to sleep. When I woke, the world outside was brighter, almost too bright. The storm had passed. The first morning away from that house felt unreal. I woke to the sound of church bells from somewhere down the street, and for a few seconds I didn't remember where I was. The ceiling above me was low-painted white with faint cracks near the corners. The sheets smelled of detergent and lemon. Then it came back, all of it. The dinner, the flickering lights, my dad's voice admitting what he had done. I sat up slowly, breathing in the quiet. The clock on the nightstand read 7:30. Outside, the sunlight hit the snow in soft gold, melting the edges of the drifts that had piled against the fence. I got up and poured a glass of water from the pitcher on the table. My hand shook slightly. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something else, something like release. I took a slow sip and felt my throat tighten. The innkeeper had left a note under my door. Breakfast until 10. I smiled faintly, tucked it into my pocket, and went downstairs. The small dining room smelled of coffee and cinnamon. Only a few people were there, travelers probably. I took a seat near the window. A woman at the next table glanced at me. She looked to be in her 60s, her hair silver and tied neatly back. "Rough morning," she said kindly. "You could say that," I replied. She smiled. "I always can tell when someone's been through something. It's in the eyes." I nodded. Maybe she was right. After breakfast, I went back to my room and opened my laptop. The post I had written was still climbing in views. Thousands of comments now. Some angry, some compassionate, all of them hungry for the truth. I read a few before closing the screen. It felt strange watching my life become a story to strangers, but maybe that was how the truth survived, through retelling. My phone buzzed. A message from Detective Moore. "We need to meet. Updates on the case." I agreed to meet in the county courthouse at noon. The drive there was quiet. The road wound through stretches of forest and open fields, the sky pale blue above them. The world looked clean new even, but underneath it all, I knew what still waited. When I arrived, Moore greeted me with a nod. He was holding a thin folder. "We have preliminary results," he said. "Your dad's hearing is set for next week. He's cooperating, but his lawyer's fighting to suppress the video." "Can they do that?" I asked. "They can try, but it's unlikely to work. The confession is clear, and the public stream makes it impossible to deny. And Diana," he hesitated, "she's been moved to a medical facility. Attempted to harm herself last night. She survived." I said nothing. My chest felt tight, but not from sympathy. He continued, "She's agreed to testify against him in exchange for leniency." "Of course she has," I said softly. He studied me for a moment. "You seem calm about that." "Calm is easier than anger," I said. He closed the folder. "There's one more thing. Your mom's case will be reopened officially. You'll be listed as the petitioner." I nodded slowly. "It's about time." He smiled faintly. "You did something brave, Catherine. Not everyone could have faced that dinner table and stayed seated." I met his eyes. "I didn't stay for them, I stayed for her." After the meeting, I walked around the courthouse square. The snow had melted in patches, revealing dark, wet cobblestone. People passed by with coffee cups and briefcases, their lives unbroken by the kind of truth that changes everything. I sat on a bench near the fountain and let the cold air fill my lungs. For years, I had thought revenge would feel like triumph, but it didn't. It felt like silence, deep and heavy, the kind that comes after a long storm. My phone rang. "Harris." "How are you holding up?" he asked. "As well as I can." He paused. "The restaurant's been quiet without you." I smiled faintly. "Maybe it's time to change that." He hesitated. "Are you coming back?" "Maybe, but not to stay. There's something I need to do first." "What's that?" "I need to go home." "The real one." He didn't ask more. Just said, "I'll be here if you need me." I drove to my mom's old house that afternoon. It had been rented out for years after her death, then left empty. The key still fits. The door creaked when I pushed it open, releasing a puff of dust and air that smelled faintly of lavender. Everything was covered in sheets. The furniture, the piano, even the bookshelf where she used to keep her recipe journals. I walked through the room, slowly touching each surface, feeling the weight of years settle around me. In the kitchen, I stopped. The tile floor still had the small crack near the stove, the one she used to trip over. I knelt and ran my fingers over it. The sunlight hit the counter, revealing a faded note taped to the side of a cabinet. My handwriting. I must have written it when I was a teenager. It said, "Dinner with Mom tonight. Don't forget dessert." I smiled, but it hurt. I took the note down and folded it into my pocket. I spent the rest of the day cleaning. The motions felt mechanical but comforting. Washing the dishes, sweeping the floor, opening windows to let in fresh air. With each task, it felt like I was reclaiming something. Not just the space, but the part of myself that had lived there. By evening, the sky had turned soft pink. I found an old record player in the living room and put on one of her favorite albums. The crackling sound filled the space. I sat on the couch, closed my eyes, and for a moment, it felt like she was there again. The knock on the door startled me. I opened it to find Diana. Her face was pale, her frame thinner than I remembered. She wore a heavy coat, her hands trembling as she held a small envelope. "How did you find me?" I asked quietly. "I didn't have to," she said. "Harris told me." I stepped aside, letting her in. She looked around the room, her eyes softening at the sight of the photos still on the wall. "I needed to see it," she said. "The house." I waited. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter. "He wanted you to have this," she said. "Who, your dad?" I stared at her. "Why?" She shrugged weakly. "Maybe guilt? Maybe love." I unfolded the letter. His handwriting was unmistakable. I was wrong about what strength means. I thought control was power. I thought silence protected the family. It only buried it. Tell her I was weak, not evil. Tell her I loved her mom more than she'll ever know. I let out a slow breath. "He wrote it this morning," Diana said. "They let me visit before I came here." I folded the letter carefully. It didn't erase anything, but it changed something small inside me. "He'll go to prison," she said. "I'll live with what I did for the rest of my life." I looked at her. "Then make it mean something." She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I walked her to the door. Before she left, she turned back. "She would be proud of you," she said softly. I closed the door after her and leaned against it. The silence thick again, but not cruel. I went back to the couch and opened my laptop. The story was still spreading online, being shared across forums, news pages, everywhere. My inbox was full of messages from strangers thanking me, telling me how it gave them courage. I read a few before closing it. Then I opened a new document and began typing again. Not about revenge this time, but about forgiveness, about what it means to survive when the truth finally sets you free but leaves you with pieces too sharp to hold. I wrote until the sky turned dark and the record stopped spinning. Outside, a single light flickered on in the distance. For the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid of the dark. The trial started on a gray Monday morning. The courthouse steps were slick from rain, and the air smelled like wet stone and cigarettes. Reporters gathered near the entrance microphones, ready faces eager. I pulled my coat tighter around me as I climbed the steps. The sound of cameras clicking followed like the soft percussion of a storm. For weeks, the story had spread everywhere. People whispered about the daughter who exposed her dad, about the poisoned wine, about the silent dinner that turned into a confession. I didn't recognize myself in any of it. The truth had a strange way of turning real people into stories. Inside the courtroom was smaller than I expected. The wooden benches creaked when people shifted. I found a seat near the front. My lawyer leaned toward me. "You don't have to look at him if you don't want to." I nodded, but I already knew I would. I needed to. The door opened at the side and my dad was led in, dressed in a dark suit that didn't quite fit anymore. His shoulders were lower, his skin grayer. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, our eyes met for just a second. Then he looked away. Diana sat on the other side of the room. She looked smaller, too. Her hands twisted the hem of her sweater until the fabric puckered. When her eyes met mine, there was no malice left, only exhaustion. The judge entered and the room rose. My heart pounded as I sat back down. The sound of the gavel cracked through the air like thunder. The prosecutor started with the recording. The flicker of the chandelier, the voices, the confession. My dad's words filled the room again. "I loved her, but she was going to ruin everything. It was supposed to be quick." People in the audience gasped softly. I sat still. I had already lived those words 100 times in my mind. When the video ended, the silence that followed felt endless. The prosecutor turned to the jury. "This is what truth looks like when it's forced into light," she said. "It doesn't shout, it trembles." My dad's lawyer stood next, speaking of stress, manipulation, regret. He painted him as a broken man trying to hold his family together. I listened, but the words slid past me like wind. Nothing they said could change what I had seen. Then it was my turn. The bailiff called my name and I stood. My legs felt heavy as I walked to the stand. I sat down, my hand pressed to the worn Bible as I swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor approached gently. "Miss Ryan, can you tell the court what led you to that night?" I took a slow breath. My voice came out steady. For years, I believed my mom died of natural causes, but there were things that never made sense. The way my dad avoided her name, the way Diana changed the subject every time I asked questions. Then one day I received a note. "Don't eat anything, they know." The courtroom was silent. The prosecutor nodded. "What did you do when you read that?" I smiled faintly. I did what my mom would have done. I stayed calm. I watched. She nodded. "And what did you discover?" "That the people I trusted most were capable of terrible things. But also that silence can be just as dangerous as poison." My voice caught on that last word. I felt the weight of it in the air. When I finished, the prosecutor thanked me quietly and stepped away. My dad's lawyer declined to cross-examine. I stepped down from the stand and returned to my seat. My hands were cold even though the room was warm. The trial lasted 2 days. When the verdict finally came, the rain had stopped, and the sun had pushed through the clouds. The jury filed back in, their faces unreadable. The foreman stood and read the decision. Guilty on all counts. A low murmur spread through the room. My dad didn't react. He just sat there, eyes on the floor. Diana closed her eyes and began to cry softly. The judge thanked the jury, then dismissed the room. As people began to leave, my dad finally looked at me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he mouthed a single word. "Sorry." I nodded. It was all that was left to say. Outside, the air felt lighter. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing, but their voices blurred together. I walked past them, down the steps into the open square. Harris was waiting by his car. "You did it," he said quietly. I shook my head. "We did?" He smiled faintly. "What now?" I looked up at the sky. The clouds were breaking apart, thin streaks of light cutting through. "I don't know. Maybe I'll finally start living again." He nodded. "You should." We drove in silence back to the restaurant. The place was closed that day, the sign in the window flipped to restocking. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and lemon oil. Everything was clean, polished, ready. I walked through the dining room, running my hand along the edge of the counter. So many memories lived in that space. My mom's laughter, the sound of her humming while she kneaded dough, the warmth that used to fill every corner. I could almost see her again, standing by the window, flower on her hands. Harris poured 2 cups of coffee and handed me one. I took a sip, the taste strong and familiar. "You know," he said, "after a while she'd be proud of you." I smiled. "I hope so." He looked at me. "You know what she used to say about revenge?" I shook my head. He chuckled softly. "She said revenge isn't about hurting back. It's about taking back what they stole from you. Your peace, your power, your voice." I looked out the window. "Maybe that's what I did then." He nodded. "You did." For a long moment, we just sat there, the light from the window casting long shadows across the floor. Outside, a few customers walked by, glancing through the glass, unaware of the story that had unfolded here. Later that evening, I went to the garden behind the restaurant. The snow had melted into soft mud, and the first green shoots were starting to show. Harris had cleared a small patch of soil. I knelt there, pressing my hands into the earth. It was cold but alive. I planted a few tulip bulbs, the same kind my mom used to love. When I finished, I sat back on my heels, brushing the dirt from my hands. The sun was setting, the light golden and warm. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of the past pressing down. I felt my mom's presence, instead soft and steady, like she had finally come home. Inside, the phone on the counter buzzed. Messages from people I didn't know. Some said thank you. Some said they were inspired. I opened the forum where I had first shared my story. The post had been marked with thousands of likes and hundreds of shares. People had started calling it the Silent Revenger. I scrolled through the comments, smiling at some, tearing up at others. One stood out. It said, "You turned your pain into power. That's how we heal." I closed the laptop, my heart steady. That night I went home to the small apartment I had rented in town. I lit a candle and set my mom's letter beside it. Then I unfolded my dad's last note again. I read it one final time before tucking it away. Some truths didn't need to be erased. They just needed to rest. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back wasn't the daughter who sat quietly at the Christmas dinner table. She wasn't the girl who avoided questions or hid her anger. She was someone who had faced the darkness and walked through it. I turned off the light and sat by the window. The city below was alive, cars moving, people laughing. Life kept going. It always did. I whispered softly, "Rest easy, Mom. It's over now." Then I smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because I finally understood that it didn't have to be. Justice wasn't about perfection. It was about peace. If you're listening to this story and it touched something in you, tell me what part stayed with you most. Maybe you've lived through your own kind of silence. Maybe you've sat at a table where no one believed you. Leave a comment, share your story. Because the more we speak, the less power silence has. And if you believe that truth, even painful truth, deserves to be told, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories like mine. Because somewhere out there, another silent revenger is waiting for her moment to speak.